Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Indy Investor Pod. I got Dave and Sterling here with me again today as we're going to kind of dig into just the topic of contractors. It's one of the, probably from all of our standpoints, probably one of the top questions we always get. I know me as a wholesaler, like, hey, what contractors can you recommend? Who should I work with if I buy this property? I'm sure Dave's, getting that contract or getting that conversation all the time with people that he's working with and some of the students and just people he's flipping with as well. Same thing with Sterling on the property management side. If you're in property management, you got to be working with the good contractors. The owners want to know what contractors you're working with. So we're all getting that from different angles of just who are the good contractors, how do you work with them, how do you hire them, how do you fire them, that type of thing and stuff. So Sterling, let me kind of lean over to you first. Is that really one of the top conversations you probably get of when you're sitting down with that new investor that wants to work with you guys and wants to bring you guys on for property management? They just want to know, like, hey, what contractors you use, how does the process work, all that type of stuff. Is that one of the top questions you guys get?
Oh yeah, without a doubt, right? It's something that we explore throughout, our journey. I've been in this line of work for going on 10 years now, in some capacity, right?
Yeah.
Started in development, moved to, different aspects of the business, but that's always been a big problem. I say problem, it's always been a sore spot, right? Because figuring out how to best do this. When I first started, I started with like this package that I would give contractors, and it was probably about 4 pages long, right? I wish I could pull up my, like our package now is somewhere around like 28 pages long, right?
Yeah.
Like it has visuals, like it's like, this is a before picture, this is an after picture, this is how you're going to get paid, this is my responsibility, this is your responsibility. So absolutely, this is something that is what with the property management, what makes it different though is from when I was just buying and holding properties for myself was I can kind of take a little bit more risk than I can do it inside my business. So, excuse me, as a property manager, I have to always tell people the analogy. I can't use the guy that's on Angie's list, but I also can't use the person that is
The cousin of the uncle of the
yeah,
guy
like
that owns, yeah.
exactly. You know what I mean? Like the so low that it's so in my analogy is say retail a water heater's $1,200 to $1,300. Well, a water heater itself is $450 to $500, give or take, right? So now your handyman is going to be able to do it for $850. We're probably somewhere around $925 to $950 on that water heater. And people are like, oh yeah, that's great, that's fine, until the bill comes.
Yeah.
So I think it's just understanding when you use a third party manager like myself, we are restrictive to use people that are licensed, bonded, that are wreckable. If something goes wrong, I can go show up on their doorstep without my gun, right? Like I don't have to show up with a gun. I can just say, hey, I'm going to call my lawyer. Like,
Right.
so when you're not licensed, bonded, you don't know where they live or where their office is. That's where you kind of get in these trouble. And we hear it all the time. Hey, I can get it done cheaper than that. Yeah, I mean, people in hell want ice water. So of course you can.
Yeah.
But like Patrick Grayson always says, you can have affordability, you can have quality, and you can have time. You can only pick two. Which two are you going to pick?
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. I like that you brought up too, just like kind of how your, that packet of stuff, your service level agreements essentially is what that is like, how it started off as 4 pages. Now it's like 28 pages because you're going to find out, hey, what all does need to be in here. And like, oh, we need to make sure, hey, we're covering this, we're going over this. And that's top notch. That's what we need to be operating is if you are bringing on contractors, you're working on things, have those SLAs, those service level agreements that you're like, hey, this is what I expect. This is what this is what needs to be done on this. And if it's not done, this is why I can fire you. And here's the reason for it. And we're going to move on and stuff. So Dave, let's start with I know you've been working with contractors for a while now on different projects and things like that. When you're bringing on a contractor or starting to work with maybe a new contractor or something, what are some things that you do or some of those questions you ask to vet that person to make sure they're right for some of the contract or some of the projects that you want to take on?
Well, if I'm bringing on the new what I would classify as a GC, somebody that's going to, complete a high percentage of the project, the first thing that I'll do is I'll ask them for their insurance license, and so I know I've got a licensed, bonded, and insured guy.
Yep.
I can I can work with a guy that's not necessarily licensed but bonded and insured. I'm more concerned about those two than I am maybe the license on it. But what I do from a vetting standpoint, and works pretty well, is if I'm hiring a new guy, I'm saying, okay, where's your 2 projects you're working on right now? And I said, let's meet them, walk them, see what they look like. And so now I get the address. So at least the day before, or an hour and a half before I'm to meet that contractor at that house, I'll show up and talk to his subs.
Yeah.
Hey, is the guy good to work with? Is he easy? This is a job that's almost complete. When's the last time you saw him? He says, oh, he was here 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So I know, that's probably not a guy I'm going to hire.
Yeah.
Because I'll be there, twice a week, just seeing if we've got the progress going, and going to the point that I would desire for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, is he a fast pay? That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So how long have you worked for him? So if you've got the guys, like my main contractor that I use on a lot of my stuff there, every one of his crew has been there 7-8 years.
Yeah.
So I know he has some stability that his guys are going to come to work, and he has a structure with him where, the guys that's kind of in charge, that's working in the job, they take a lunch break from 12 to 12:45. If I go by there at 2 o'clock or 2:30, they've got a smoke break. But other than that, they're in there working on the house.
Yeah.
On it. So, that's the kind of organization and management that I want to see from the guy that's managing my job, because I am paying him, a 15-20% upcharge on that particular job.
Yep.
So you can vet them out. And one of the things that we do right now is, if I hire one GC for the job, I normally, what I call, getting that project ready for him to go in and work it. I'm demoing it because I can get it demoed at a pretty fair price. I'm getting the walls down to the studs. I'm taking a lot of stuff away when I hire a GC. I'm hiring him for stuff that if I individually put it out, electrician, for instance, I might have to pay $65 an hour if I hired, or $85 an hour if I hired one of the big electrical companies to come in. So I want to get my project ready for him. If he needs his material, tell me what I need, and I have it there. So if I'm paying a guy $40 an hour, he's not running to Lowe's to get $500 or a switch. And the switch costs $8, but it cost me $55 because he took an hour to do it.
Right. Yep.
Dave, what does peace of mind cost? Like, what is that percentage that you're willing to go over just for peace of mind, or go under? Because you're getting it at a discount because you're breaking the labor and the materials and stuff like that. But I know we talked in the past, and you get so frustrated with people that nickel and dime over stuff that you feel like is frivolous, because of your peace of mind. How much is that worth for you?
Well, you don't really know if you've got peace of mind on a project. Peace of mind to me is seeing progress every day. Like when I if I stop by a job at 10 o'clock in the morning, that there's somebody there working, if I'm on the time frame on that particular job. And so I'm calling these people and say, hey, where you at? Are you going to be here? Have you been here? But peace of mind is, Sterling, it's I don't know if I ever get peace of mind. I'm too I need to see the project every,
Mhm.
every 3 days.
Yeah, that's why he's driving past at 10 o'clock to check on it, because it's
Yeah.
tough. It's tough to get. It's tough to have that. So
Yeah, you can't get, if you get peace of mind, then all of a sudden, when things doesn't go well, then the stress level increases, substantially into your
Absolutely.
project.
yeah,
And I don't think if you have peace of mind in the flipping world, then you're probably way overpaying for your services that you're getting.
I was thinking that too. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I mean, when I start looking at, Brian, some common red flags that I just keep coming across, and these same red flags has probably been inside of doing this. I've been working with contractors for nearly 10 years, and these are the same red flags for the last 10 years. One common one is it's telling me that work is done and it's not done, right? And you basically what happens is they get in front of the job or they get ahead of the job and they are now chasing the check, right? And
yep,
they say it's done. I'm like, all right, cool. Well, we have a method in which we do that. You got to give us 48 hours. We'll walk it. Da, 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 da. Well, I happen to be in the neighborhood, so I stopped by. And I stopped by and I'm like, they rolling paint, like, and I'm like, wait, I thought it was done. Well, we're going to be done in 2 hours. Well, you're not done.
yeah.
Like, so they're trying to get in front of the job, right? Another
Or
one
it's
is
on that same note. It's it's going to be finished today. But then
exactly.
you go over like, oh well, we got to go back in the morning and finish up this last like 5% or
Oh
whatever.
man, it happens so frequently that it's just I just know that they're lying at this point. I just assume that they're lying at this point. The other one is that I see is a lack of detail in the scope of work. And so I used to own a GC company, and this is why I don't own a GC company anymore, because I was only as good as my contractors to be able to give me the detailed scope of work. And what happens is with the lack of detailed scope of work, if you tell me that, like, I have this one contractor we used to use on all of our personal residents, and he would say, rental, what's the word? He was like, almost, it would be like rental quality, 100% complete when done. Like, what does that mean? Right? Like, what does that mean? Like, are you laying carpet? Are you laying LVT? Like, he would just be like, rehab, $2,000, completed 100% is like what his quote was. And I'm like, all right, great. Well, you didn't replace the cabinets. Oh no, we ain't gonna replace the cabinets. We're just gonna paint the cabinets. I don't want painted cabinets. I thought I was getting, new cabinets. So not having a detailed scope from contractors has seemed like a common theme as well. And what happens is normally it happens when you get the people that are affordable, like price, quality, and time. You can only have two, right? So what you're doing is you're cutting down on that price, and they probably can get the time, but they're probably not the best quality either, right? So, and then it leaves that gray area. And in my line of work, I think Dave's same way, Brian's same way, is like, we can't really have gray area. We need to know what we're paying for. Like, to say that it's 100%, it's going to be rental rehab 100% does not help me, because my idea of what 100% rental rehab is changing up the floors from carpet to LVT, new paint, new cabinets, new countertops. So if you think that it's different, then we have a disconnect here. And then they say, well, Sterling, for $2,000, you thought you were getting all that? I didn't know. Well, you said that I was getting 100% of what I thought. So, that's just another red flag that I kind of see.
Sterling, one of the things that we look at, because we do some what I classify as rental rehabs, but rental rehabs, the quality, I mean, the electrical is going to be the same. The HVAC is going to be the same.
Right.
The only difference when I talk about rental rehab is the type of materials I may use.
Right.
I may use laminate instead of granite on a rental rehab.
Mm-hmm.
I may use the first level of cabinets versus the third level of cabinets. So the difference between flip quality and rental rehab is the type of materials that I may use on the house. I may pick a discontinued floor, an LTV at floor at Lowe's to put in a rent ready house versus that's not acceptable for a flip house. but the quality of work needs, and the pricing needs to be the same. So it's a matter of, I save my money on the quality materials I put in versus the quality of the paint, the quality of the electrical, the quality of the plumbing. You can't cut electrical, you can't cut plumbing. You have to go in and change all the switches. You have to go in and change all of the, the outlets in a house. I mean, it's $7 or $8 in 20 minutes to do that stuff, but it makes your house safer and takes maintenance away for 10 years on a property.
Right.
So, but, and that's where the guys get, they associate rental rehab quality to flip quality, and the quality of the work has to be the same.
Right.
It's just the type of materials that you use.
Yeah, exactly. So I think one of the things too that stands out to me a lot of times, and what people maybe run into trouble with, is like when you're onboarding a new contractor in some way, it has to be just like onboarding a new employee. I need to make sure, like, hey, I'm going to go through this. I have to have all this stuff ready. I'm going to go through, make sure that and my standpoint is like, I'm going to explain it to them, then I'm going to do it like kind of beside them, and then I'm going to have them explain it to me to make sure that makes sense. Coming into like the just the detailed scope of work too. Like, what does that mean? Like, okay, I want an itemized thing. I want one for each room. You say do kitchen, like what all does that mean? What all it is? Okay. Then hopefully we can build a relationship up. Then we might have a lingo that comes. We've done 10 projects together. When you say, rent ready, done on, whatever it is that you said, like, I know what that means now. We've done 10 projects together. I know what that means. This is what my expectation is every time, and being able to do that. Because that's really the ultimate goal, I think, from any of us. And a lot of people, when they're working with contractors and bringing them on, it's not to just do this one property. It's hopefully that we can do 10 together. We can do 15 together. We can do however many together. I think that's what a lot of people are looking for. So kind of onboarding them and doing that correctly from the start and getting them underway, and not just bringing them in and just being like, oh, okay, this is your process. This is how you do it. No, here's how I want it done. Here's my process. How can we work together? How can we mesh our process or whatever is a big thing. So when you guys are, Dave, when you're kind of helping to develop those relationships and kind of help, you've brought somebody in, you've kind of, you've done multiple projects with them now. What are some of the things that kind of really, like, how does that put you in an advantage, I guess? Or what are some things that you make that work of, like, okay, now we do have this lingo. We know what this means. Does that, coming back to that peace of mind thing, do you have more of a peace of mind at that point of like, oh, okay, I know what they mean when they say this? Or do you get that? Does that come along down the road?
Well, you can get, I think you get a better communication level the more projects you get done.
Yeah.
And you can put them on what I classify as tighter time frames to get the project done. And you understand, I think for every project you get successfully complete with a guy, then your time management of that guy becomes less and less, because the trust becomes, better and better with that particular contractor.
Yeah.
I've got a couple contractors that they work less expensive than some of my others, but they need to be managed.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to go over the scope with them. They tend to come in, I think, a lot less than they should on the scope of the work. So then I'll break it down. I said, okay, does it include this? Does it include that? Does it include this on it versus painting the interior? Are you going to patch the walls? Are you going to pull the, simple things is, are you going to pull the switch plates off to paint it? We had a contractor, we went in and it's like, it was mind boggling to see the work. And he had spent a day taping this house, and he taped around light switches instead of pulling them. He taped around the border on the ceiling. It was just mind blowing. I said, have you ever painted a house before on it? With the painter I'm talking to, when I've got a contractor that I'm and they told me, oh yeah, he's done. I said, this guy's an idiot. He has no idea. I said, you can't make any money with this guy painting it what you quoted me to do that.
Yeah.
And but yeah, you quickly know if you're going to have a comfort zone. When you're halfway through a job you've got to figure out immediately if this guy's going to work for you again. And then if he's not, then you have to manage to get to the end with that guy at some semblance of what,
Yeah.
what he quoted you. So you don't get too far behind him as far as, what I want to do is I never want to get behind on the money.
Mm-hmm.
I always want to be ahead of him on the money. So when I pay him, it's for work completed, not work that I hope he gets done in the future.
Yeah. What's some advice that you guys have on that? I feel like that's a big hang up for a lot of, especially even newer investors when they're starting to work with contracts of like, oh, they want, a third of it up front. Like, no, they haven't completed anything yet. Like I'll buy materials or I'll pay for materials up front, but I'm going to pay for work till it's done. Or what's some advice you guys have for, some of the investors that are kind of stuck in that or having trouble with that a little bit, Sterling?
Yeah, I think you got to know your value. Starting out, you got to know your value. That might be your first deal. You think you might do multiple deals. I don't believe in the whole dangling carrots and stuff like that. I feel like that is disingenuous in nature. I think you should be honest with people where you are and what your mission is to complete, and they can buy into your mission of like ethosity is to enhance the quality of our community. It's the bigger picture and paint that picture, not the idea that, hey, I'm going to give you 100 homes and stuff like that, right? Like, because those things are fleeting. And once people feel like that's not, satisfied, then they go on to the next one. So to answer your question, I think with understanding your value, you would understand what Dave said is 100% correct in the sense of, you can start the job. If you start the job, then you will get paid on Friday for the work that you're completed. I'm not a person that buy material. I know Dave is because Dave's smarter than me. But especially if you're going to be the one funding the material, then they don't have any upfront cost. So they are always working on the things to be able to get, completed necessarily and not in arrears. I've done it in the past where have done deposits, and sometimes it's worked, but sometimes it hasn't worked, right? Like, yeah. And when you talk about bigger jobs, we can be talking about a deposit of $20,000. So getting yourself that exposed is not recommended. So for me, I started, GCing 10 years ago. I was on the commercial side. Everything's net 30, everything's net 60. So it was not a question if I'm asking Big Lots or Hobby Lobby, can you pay on a weekly basis? And they're like, get the heck out of here, right? So I kind of always have taken that approach to it. So we have two different type of jobs inside of our company. We have, service calls, and then we have our rehabs. And with our service calls, those are all net 30. And then on our rehabs, we do pay upon completion on a weekly basis, basically. If it's completed by Tuesday, you get paid on Friday, basically. So it gives us time to kind of work through everything. And inside of there, it even breaks down for us, inside of like the handyman, there's a there's a labor and materials inside of that. So understanding what labor and materials should be and what I'm going to pay for it up front is something that you kind of have to start understanding so that you're not overpaying for stuff. Like for ours, I'm willing to pay $60 an hour per person on my handyman work, for my service calls, and then whatever the material is. But there's also stuff that you got to quote through service calls, right? Like I'm not going to do labor and materials for a roof. I'm not doing labor and materials for a water heater. So you have to be able to understand the distinction between labor and materials, and then you have your quoting jobs, I like to call it. You have your quoting jobs, I like to call it, which is like your roof. But then it's a third one that people seem to have a hardest time to understand, and that's the exploration, then a quote. Meaning you have to be able to go into like it's a water leak. I know it's a water leak. You don't want that person to give you a quote before they explore it. And right. I think a lot of time investors in my industry really struggle with that one because they're like, all right, can they give us a quote on how much it is? Nah, like you don't want them to give a quote because what they're going to do is they're going to quote the worst case scenario. And how many times do you think they come back and be like, hey, actually, it wasn't $3,000 worth of work. It was only $2,200. So we're going to give you an $800 discount, right?
Yeah.
That never happens. So you have to be able to understand those three type of areas inside of investing and buy and holds, where you have labor and materials, you have what needs to be quoted, which are bigger jobs, roof, water heater, furnace, well, not water heater, but furnace. And then you have the exploration, then a quote. And don't try to shortcut those.
Yeah. I think it's one of the things too, just like as you got to figure out what your comfort level is and what you want to be able to do with it too. I know I'm probably the way that I want to work is not conducive to every contractor. Every contractor is not going to want to work with me, but I got to find the ones that, hey, this is how I want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Is this okay with you? No, it's not. No, you don't. You want to do something the exact opposite. Okay, we probably can't work together. That needs to be part of the vetting process as well. Not just like, oh yeah, I agree on the price. That's good. You sound like you came referred. Like that was good too. Okay, you have to be able to work together as well. Dave, as we kind of round this out.
One of the things we're doing now with our materials, I'm like Sterling. If we're buying at Lowe's, we'll try to use our LLR and buy the materials and get them to site. A lot of times, if they need materials and authorize them, say it's $700, I said go to Menards, buy it there, and then give us the receipt. And that way, we get the 11% rebate that comes from Menards,
right?
And we're not getting 11% added to our job on the cost of goods.
Mm-hmm.
And they either the rebate goes unused or they take it and add another 11% to their profit. And some of the contractors, I'll let them keep the 11% and almost charge it, consider it a delivery or pickup charge.
Yeah.
For their time.
Idea. Yeah.
So, and it works out, typically works out fairly well, but I know if I'm doing a major and it's at $2,000-3,000, then I'm going to want the receipt if I send my card over there and have them pick it up and do the work.
Yeah.
Right.
So Dave, I want to add, as we kind of round up this episode and stuff too, I wanted to ask you kind of just when you're in that situation and you have to let go of a contractor, you have to kind of, hey, we're going to move on with you, or I'm not, I know you kind of meant to, or you said earlier of like halfway through the project, you're going to realize whether you want to work with that person or not. And if you're not, like, you're going to have to like kind of make sure you get to the end. What's some advice you have for people out there too, of just like when they know like, hey, I'm not going to be able to work with this person, being able to let go of a contractor or fire a contractor, whether it's in the middle of the job, doing it the right way, or just the end and be like, hey, sorry, we're not gonna be able to work together. Is there really a good way or a right way to do that you've noticed over the years?
Well, I've had to do it a few times. I've always treated it as almost, when I know I'm firing them mid-job or 3/4 the way through the job, I almost treat it as a settlement conference.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that, hey, the scope and the job, it looks like it's going to run over 20% on what we're here, based on what I paid you, what's left to do, what's our reasoning? You understand where I'm coming from? Are you going to be able to complete the job under the scope that you have? And then if it's, I've got to get it finished anyway. So, do I say, okay, I'm willing to pay you another 10%, even though maybe there's 20% if you want to complete the work on it. If you don't want to complete the work and you want to be done with me today and done with this job, then I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
So I tried, so they're not mad at you, so they're not filing, trying to file mechanics lien. You almost, if you're going to get rid of them, you almost have to treat it as a pre-settlement conference rather than just, start yelling at them. You guys are idiots. Get your crew, get your crap out of my house. And that never goes well.
Yeah. Give them the option to walk away and
give them the option to walk away versus you trying to, just say, hey, you guys are idiots. That's what you're thinking, but just, you guys are idiots. Get out of my house type thing.
Yeah. So Sterling, have any final thoughts on that stuff, man?
No, I think everything we talked about hit it on the head. I think what people need to understand with any of these things that we're talking about, people, right? So we're dealing with people. You can't treat them like a commodity and think that they're going to be able to get the most out of that person. Oftentimes I see when things fail, there's trouble on both sides of it. As somebody that has been in the middle, because having the owner as well as the contractor, I've seen faults on both sides. And a huge majority of the time, I see an owner that thinks, or an investor that thinks that this person is their personal assistant, and that's not the case.
Yeah.
What you have to be able to do is you have to be able to have strong agreements and strong contracts written out so that everybody understands their responsibilities, and stick to that. Because the minute that we, differ from that is when we get issues, right? Like, it's the reason why we have contracts. And if you have a change order, make sure it's in paper, written down, and it goes through the same process, because those are where mistakes happen, right? Like, you started on contract and then on paper, then it just happened. They asked you, hey, you want to do this? You're like, yeah, go ahead and do it. And then that unravels the ball for now you up the creek. And you're like, I don't know how we got here. Well, you got here because you didn't follow the methods of staying on task when it comes to these contracts,
Sterling,
so that everybody's accountable.
I think in wrapping up, you're absolutely right. But, me especially, and a lot of other flippers too, we have to accept a high percentage of why it went south.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a clarity by us to that person that's going to do our job.
Yep.
And we want to blame the contractor.
Yep.
And he had a perception going in, you had a perception going in. And it's like, if I walk a house with my contractor, I'll take him to one where he finished. I said, I want my house to look like this. This is an acceptable finished product on it. And then another thing we didn't get to touch on at all that I wanted to touch on was when you work with contractors on a cost plus basis. And this has become more and more. I'm doing a couple, I've sold a couple leases, and they're doing massive amounts of work on this. And they typically do cost plus. So anytime you deal with a contractor on a cost basis, which is a good way to work, is understand what, that cost plus guy should have overhead and his overhead and stuff involved in that cost. You need to know what that is and it not be a part of the cost.
Yeah.
What's the guy going to make? Is it cost plus 30? Is it cost plus 20? Is it cost plus 10? It really should be cost plus 10 with him including overhead. Mm-hmm. If he's cost plus 20, his overhead should, in my mind, should necessarily be on top of that.
Yeah.
Because then it becomes cost plus 30.
Yeah. David, just, I know we're kind of running along here, but so you said you started to do a couple like projects like that with the cost plus, like what's the advantage of that for you? Like, why do you prefer that more, or what do you think?
Commercial, this is what commercial guys want.
Yeah.
Because they're more concerned about the rent rate for their REIT.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Versus, they don't mind plowing extra into the lease, so they'd rather just know what they've got. And the general contractors, because the job's so extensive, that's the only way they can get an accurate bid is to give you an estimate and then a cost, and then on cost plus what it actually costs. So you can get the best of both worlds doing that. You can just say, okay, here's my scope. Here's what my guy's going to make. Here's what my end project is. And yet, if the electrical is not $32,000, you save a little money.
Yeah.
On it. So.
Gotcha. No, good stuff, fellows. Really appreciate it. And I would say just, final thoughts, just to recap kind of a little bit here, as you guys are dealing with, as you're onboarding a contractor, make sure you guys are going through, having that sit down, understanding what expectations are, coming up with some service level agreements, going through that stuff, signing contracts, make sure, you have the right people in the right spot for you to be successful. manage your project too. Make sure you're checking on it, do your things until you have that relationship built, to be able to kind of get that, peace of mind and stuff. And then at the end too, if you do have to let go of a contractor, you have a bad experience, or even something the contractor's working out, but something happened within the project, make sure you as the owner, or you as the flipper, or you as the buyer of that property, as the investor, are kind of doing a little reflection on, hey, what could I have done differently, or what can I do to help this out, versus just assuming like, this just went bad. This was a bad contractor. I'm just going to go hire another one the same way. Always make sure you do a little bit of reflection to see what basically, as in that you are taking responsibility for a little bit of that mishap as well. So thanks a lot, fellows. Really appreciate your insight. And that's a wrap for this episode of the Indy Investor Pod. And we'll see you guys next time. Take care.